The views and opinions expressed on My Story Living with Lupus podcast represents each person's individual experience. By listening to this podcast or reading our blog, you agree not to use this podcast or blog as medical advice to treat any medical condition in either yourself or others. As always, consult your own physician for any medical issues that you may be having. My Story Living with Lupus podcast is officially trademarked, all rights reserved. Thank you for joining me for another episode of My Story Living with Lupus podcast. I'm your host, Susan Hendrix, and I'm so glad that you can join me on this Monday, August 9th, 2021. Got a question for you. Wonder if you were a man and you were diagnosed with antiphospholipid syndrome and lupus. Now, since APS is more common in women, it is rare, fewer than 200,000 cases per year right here in the United States. Well, author Darren Radke details his journey in Deceived from Within, living with APS and lupus. He's here to talk about his journey of not only being diagnosed with antiphospholipid syndrome, but also lupus. So, you know what I want you to do. That's right. All the way from the United States to the Canary Islands of Spain. Get ready to grab your cup of coffee, your cup of tea, and to my listeners late at night, you know I appreciate you. So go ahead, come on, get ready to grab your favorite glass of wine and join the conversation right here on My Story Living with Lupus podcast. As I mentioned earlier in this episode, I have the author of Deceived from Within, Darren Radke. Darren, thank you for joining me on My Story Living with Lupus podcast. Before we discuss your book, please tell the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Okay, thank you, first of all, for having me on. Very greatly appreciated. My name is Darren Radke. Been in Wisconsinite my whole life. Married to a wonderful wife and have 2 children. And currently trying to be an author, working on both a book and a blog.
Darren, also, could you please tell the listeners about your health before being diagnosed with antiphospholipid syndrome and lupus? Because it is rare. Antiphospholipid syndrome is most commonly found in women, and it's rare. So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. I was was always healthy. I always trying to keep myself in good shape. And then all of a sudden, within a 5-day span, I wake up one morning, my arm is all swollen, and then again, 5 days later, here I am laying in the hospital bed with 2 clots. And it was puzzling. Then throughout the years, then I was very steady with my labs. We really didn't have a diagnosis other than lupus anticoagulant, something generic. Before you know it, then I had 3 seizures and another blood clot in about a 7-month period. And that kind of raised the flag with the seizures. And then I went through a lot of testing briefly, and they considered me having epilepsy. And I knew something else was going on because my skills were sliding a little bit, and my attention span, and I would forget things. And it actually took a change in neurologist, somebody that would actually listen to me, and she pushed me into the direction of the APS Foundation website. And from there, spoke to a person named Tina Pullman. She runs the website, the whole works. And I went up to Gunderson Lutheran Hospital in La Crosse, Wisconsin. And within a period of 4 months, I was diagnosed with APS and with lupus. The lupus team isn't surprised, but the APS team, it was exactly what I was hoping for. Because I fit it to the T.
Now, when it comes to women that deal with lupus, what symptoms were you having? Was it all the APS symptoms and not the what we consider the normal lupus symptoms?
I never really gave it a lot of thought, especially before then. I did notice a few things being outside. After maybe a couple of hours, I would feel drained. I didn't have the energy. But at that time, I never really put 2 and 2 together. But I was having, joint pain in my knees. I do have beat up knees because of playing lots of sports. I had my knee stroke in 2002, so I didn't really think about it too much. That as time went on, and found out more of the symptoms, it's like, wow, my energy levels were terrible. Before I lost my job, I was drinking so much coffee, and I just could not get through some of those days, and I just had no rhyme or reason for my energy levels. And as time went on, I was finding out all these other, symptoms, the brain fog, some of the neurological, issues combined with APS, how my skills, everything was just seeming to be sliding downhill. And that's kind of where I got to where I am today. It's been quite a journey since 2012 when I first got the diagnosis.
In your book, Chapter 3, you talk about transitions. And you have a quote here that states, everything happens for a reason. That reason causes changes. Sometimes it hurts, sometimes it is hard, but in the end, it's all for the best. Besides the normal changes, lifestyle changes, what other changes or transitions did you have to go through?
Well, first one was losing 2 jobs that you had to accept and try to move forward. Then, as well, as my health was deteriorating and going through a lot of changes, you kind of lose your focus on, life. And somehow, some way, you had to keep giving, not giving up and having hope to get through everything. And that's where, when you start to have a transition in life, it's like I went from being employed, getting my degree, all the way to losing 2 jobs. You have to find acceptance, and that's where I find, you transition from a full-time employee to being on disability. There's a lot of pain involved and also being a husband and a father. It's like, boy, that really changes the dynamics within my whole family. And there was a lot of transitions that were going on, and it's difficult, but that's how our lives were changing, and you had to find some sort of acceptance, and it is hard. It is very hard.
Well, did you seek any outside help to deal with the life-changing transitions that you were going through, or was it your wife and your kids that helped you through it?
A lot of it was my wife and my children. Well, mostly my wife. I mean, she is steady. She is a hard worker. She really sacrifices a ton. And beyond that, I never really reached out to anybody. And that's always been one of my biggest faults. I don't open up. And I have at times spoke to my pastor quite a few years ago. I have spoken to a few psychologists. A couple of them just didn't stick because of financial reasons, and one of them I did talk to, and she just said it's not necessarily you, it's your environment, and you gotta know your limitations, and you gotta set up boundaries, and try to find some sort of happiness. What makes you happy, and go after that. Don't give up on what makes you happy. And within time, I started, just writing a little bit, and piece by piece, and before you know it, here I am 3 years later with a book. And I was always afraid to open up, and now all of a sudden, here I have a book where I'm opening up 3/4 of the book. So it's a hard thing to do, to open up. I've never been that type of person, never. I've always just tried to stay, even keeled, and, try to portray, that, you're happy, try to be, smiling, easygoing, but, deep down, I was upset and miserable, but you just try to do your best. But, yeah, reaching out, I I was terrible.
But you turned that negative into a positive. And just for my listeners to know that this book, it is going to really help someone who, that may not know which way to turn and may not know which way to go, but through your story and through your journey in your book, you're going to help a lot of people, Darren. You really are. You're going to help a lot of people, and especially for males who are diagnosed with APS or lupus or both autoimmune illnesses. You're going to be able to help them to open up more just by reading your book and seeing what you went through.
Thank you for saying that. And I, always use the mantra of that if I can help at least one person, then I've done my job. But yeah, there's so much to learn about when you find out that 40% of people who have lupus also have APS, and they may have absolutely no clue that they do. They might have all these side effects, but can't put, 2 and 2 together. And then as well, being a man, only 10% have both. So, the 10%ers, and it's kind of a head scratcher of, why did I get sick? It's like out of the 10%, it's like, wait a minute here. How did this happen to me? But, I guess that's just the way it is. So,
yeah. And
I really hope that I do reach out and I can touch people and have that ability with my book. Again, for me to open up like that, it's kind of like here, I'm just going to lay it all out there, and this is who I am, and hopefully, I can help people. And, I can't help but go back to what I said, that if I can help one person, I've done it.
That's right. And also, it really is not enough research for men who have lupus and APS. Everything is that a woman is more susceptible of having lupus than a man. But what about the men? Where is the research on men who have this autoimmune illness? And I think that research should not only be geared towards women, but to men as well. Because yes, men have lupus and men have antiphospholipid syndrome, and there really needs to be more research in chapter 5 of your book. And my listeners, I'm not gonna give you everything in the book because you really need to purchase the book. It states, somebody get me a doctor. And by that phrase right there, we've all been through that, but give us a little bit about what you went through trying to find the doctor, a right doctor.
You got a couple of hours?
Yes.
Everything kind of just started. I had an excellent general physician, my regular doctor. He was awesome. And he accidentally, he got killed in a freak accident. at that point, I was going through a neurologist, and again, they were treating me for epilepsy, and just, I was going to say gentleman, but I should be nice about it. This doctor, he was a type person. I had to go in every 6 months because if you lose consciousness in a short period of time, the DMV here in Wisconsin, you have to have a doctor to sign off on your paperwork if you're steady enough to be driving. And he was the type of person who really manipulated me. I could not tell him anything. If I would bring up all these side effects that I'm having, the first time I did that, he put me on a different medication. And truth be told, I'll swear on a Bible, he said, "You're ready to pay for the big stuff." And he wasn't kidding. The medication he put me on, a month supply, is $350. It was incredible. And at that point, I should have said, forget about it. I'm going to see another neurologist. But I thought, I kept thinking about my driver's license, and that was a huge mistake. And then finally, after probably about 4 years of dealing with this guy, I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm done. You won't listen to me. I'm finding another doctor. And I found another neurologist. I only had a couple appointments with her before she pointed me in this direction to APS. And pretty much from that point, Gunderson Lutheran was in La Crosse and on Alaska was awesome. But I also had Tina with me as another person in the room that really, she knows everything you needed to know and worked with these doctors. And I've learned more from Tina than I did from the doctors. And ever since, knock on wood, I've had great doctors throughout the years. I did have a hiccup with a new rheumatologist in December. Treated me poorly. He put me in a position where I had to validate everything to him. He had all the paperwork. He had all of my labs. It was kind of a no-brainer. With all my labs, it's right there in front of you. But, boy, he was just tough on me. And he questioned a lot of things. And when I got home, some of the things he questioned me about, I got the paperwork, scanned them into my computer, and I sent it to him. I'm like, here you go. But other than that, I've been pretty lucky. I've had great doctors. And, but I also am to the point where I'm not going to put up with any doctors, how about that?
Yeah.
I don't want to swear, but yeah, there's a lot of things I've learned throughout the years, but right now I'm to the point where it's like, you know what, you're not going to treat me poorly. If you're going to make me validate things, and you refuse to treat me as a regular human person or a human being, I'm leaving. I'm paying for your services. It's like going to a restaurant. If you get bad service, you get bad food. Why am I going back then? I'm going to find another place to go. So, I guess.
We've all been...
That's the long answer about my issues with doctors, or good and bad.
We've all been there. I know I have, because I was firing them left and right. And my sister would look at me, and I said, I don't care. They're not going to treat me like I'm nothing, or that I'm just coming in here and everything is all in my head. No, they have...
They can't see it, Yeah, okay, it's an invisible chronic illness.
Right.
But it's like, there might be some people out there that, maybe, lying about things.
Yeah, yeah.
But they're few and far in between. And it's like, please don't treat us all this way, Um, it is really tough, when you get somebody, you have to validate everything to them. And even then, you can just sense.
Yeah.
They still don't quite believe you.
Yeah.
Like, if you're talking about pain or anything, it seems like the conversation goes in the direction of, does this person want to be on painkillers?
Mm-hmm.
Things that, and I understand that, but that is not what I'm trying to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's pain involved, but I can tolerate it.
Mm-hmm.
But as a doctor, you need to know in case something down the road things change. And that was the biggest problem I had with my rheumatologist appointment in December. I just wanted to tell him a few things, and yeah, that conversation changed. And I was like, whoa.
Darren, what would you like the listening audience to know about why they need to purchase your book?
I hope that getting my story out there, that, especially as a man, to find a way to open up. Don't keep it all inside you. Because, boy, it is tough. And there was times I wanted just to quit in life. It's like I've had enough. But, as a reader, hopefully you can understand what I've been through, but hopefully to motivate you. That way you never lose hope. You gotta, how I, continued. But I also, yes, I had help to kind of push me in that direction. And I had somebody who can understand, and I hope that can motivate people. I also discussed things there towards the end, two things that I love, I love, like music and exercise. And it's like, don't quit those things as well. I mean, if they make you happy, keep doing it. Yeah, I have a couple of invisible illnesses, and I like to keep them and keep me motivated. And that's another thing that I'm hoping I can get across to people. It's like, do the things that make you happy. The only person, the only thing that could be holding you back could be you. Your body might be as well, but again, you just got to find ways to carry on, and you got to find ways to continue your hope and set an example to everybody. And that's where I hope my book does exactly that.
And to all my listeners, and from myself, I thank you so much, author Darren Radke, Deceived from Within, Living with APS and Lupus. Guys, go on over to his website at www.deceivedfromwithin.com and pick his book up. I thank you so much for joining me today, Darren, on my Story Living with Lupus podcast. I want to extend to you an invitation to come back and to talk with us more.
Well, first, thank you for having me on this podcast, and I would love to talk to you a little more down the road. It's an awesome feeling to be a part of being able to talk on a podcast, to get my story out there. And again, I hope I can be a
You sure will. Thank you so much. You have a fantastic week. Diagnosed with both antiphospholipid syndrome and lupus, author Darren Radke details his journey in Deceived from Within, living with APS and lupus. You can purchase his book at www.deceivedfromwithin.com. If you would like to appear on an episode of My Story Living with Lupus, you can contact us at mystorylivingwithlupus@gmail.com. Also visit us on our Instagram page and also our website, My Story Living with Lupus. Thank you for joining me for another episode of My Story Living with Lupus podcast with author Darren Radke. Tell you what, you guys have to pick this book up. Whether you are a man or a woman, pick this book up. It's inspirational. He never gave up the fight, Go on over to www.deceivedfromwithin.com to pick your copy up today. I told you guys that I was going in for the biopsy. I just received the call from the doctor's office. The biopsy is scheduled for August the 30th. I have to go next week to get my pre-op work done. But I'm at the table. These are the cards that I have been dealt, and I will remain at the table to play my hand. I thank you so much for putting up with the way I sound. It is a strain. It is becoming a strain. The longer I talk, I strain more. My voice more. So it is what it is. But I want to leave you with this. When you face difficult times, know that challenges are not sent to destroy you. They're sent to promote, increase, and strengthen you. I love when people that have been through hell walk out of the flames carrying buckets of water for those still consumed by the fire. I'm Susan Hendrix, your host for My Story Living with Lupus podcast. I'll possibly see you later on this week. Enjoy your week. Stay safe.